The man who stopped speaking. If you think you've seen the worst prisons in America, think again, because what happens inside this unit doesn't just lock people away, it changes them. Subscribe, because the story only gets darker from here. The alarm went off at 2:17 a.m. It wasn't the kind of alarm guards ignored. It was sharp, urgent, cutting through the concrete corridors of California's most controlled environment, the security housing unit. Known simply as The Show, Officer Daniel Reyes was already halfway down the tier before the second siren sounded. His boots echoed against the steel-grated floor, every step amplified in the silence that followed. Nights in The Show were always quiet. Too quiet. That was the point. 23 hours a day, inmates sat alone in concrete cells the size of a parking space. No conversation, no contact, no sound but their own breathing. Until something broke. Cell 14, a voice crackled over the radio. Reyes didn't respond. He already knew. Everyone knew. Cell 14 belonged to Aaron Pike, and Pike didn't cause problems. That was what made this worse. Reyes reached the cell door, his pulse steady, but his instincts tightening. Two other officers were already there, staring through the narrow slot. "What do we have?" Reyes asked. Neither of them answered immediately. One finally stepped aside. "Look for yourself." Reyes leaned in. T first. It looked like nothing. Just a man sitting on the lower bunk, back against the wall, hands resting calmly on his knees. Aaron Pike. Still. Perfectly still. Too still. Reyes frowned. "He is asleep?" "No," the officer said quietly. "He's been like that for 2 hours." Reyes narrowed his eyes. No movement? None. No twitch. No shift. No sign of life beyond the faint rise and fall of his chest. Reyes knocked on the steel door. Hard. "Pike." No response. He knocked again. Louder. Still nothing. Reyes exchanged a glance with the others. Then keyed his radio. "Control? We're opening 14. Pause. Then. Proceed." The door unlocked with a heavy metallic click. Reyes stepped inside first. The air felt wrong. Stale. Heavy. Like the room had been sealed longer than it should have been. "Pike," Reyes said, approaching slowly. "You hear me?" Nothing. Then, just as Reyes got within arm's reach, Pike's head turned. Sharp. Sudden. His eyes locked onto Reyes. And Reyes froze. Because Pike wasn't confused. He wasn't groggy. He wasn't even angry. He was focused, like he had been waiting. "Finally," Pike said. His voice was calm. "Too calm." Reyes frowned. "What do you mean, finally?" Pike didn't answer. Instead, his gaze shifted slightly, past Reyes, toward the empty corner of the cell. Reyes followed his line of sight. There was nothing there, just concrete. But Pike kept looking at it, studying it, like someone was standing there. "Who are you talking to?" Reyes asked. Pike smiled faintly. "I'm not alone anymore." The words hung in the air, cold, raw. Reyes stepped back slightly. "You've been in isolation too long, Pike. You need medical." "It's not in my head," Pike said, cutting him off. Reyes stiffened, because Pike hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved, but there was something underneath his words. "Certainly." Reyes tried to keep control of the situation. "All right, stand up. We're moving you." Pike didn't move, didn't even blink. "Can't do that," he said. "Why not?" Reyes asked. Pike's eyes flicked back to the corner, then back to Reyes. "Because it doesn't want me to." A long silence followed. One of the officers behind Reyes muttered, "This guy's losing it." But Reyes wasn't so sure, because Pike's breathing hadn't changed, his posture hadn't shifted. Everything about him was controlled, measured, like he wasn't reacting to something imaginary, but responding to something real. Reyes exhaled slowly. "All right, we're calling this in." He stepped back, motioning the others out. As the door began to close, Pike spoke again. "Officer Reyes." Reyes paused, turned. Pike was still sitting there, still calm, still watching. But this time, he wasn't looking at Reyes. He was looking Slightly to the side. A T something. That wasn't there. You should listen. Pike said quietly. Reyes frowned. Listen to what? Pike tilted his head. As if hearing something. Then smiled. It's already talking to you. The door slammed shut. The lock engaged. And for the first time in years, Officer Daniel Reyes felt something he couldn't explain. Not fear, exactly. But something close. By morning, the entire unit knew. Word spread fast in places like the show. Even without voices. An inmate in cell 14 had cracked. But the official report didn't say that. It said, behavioral anomaly. Dr. Evelyn Carter arrived just after 9 a.m. She wasn't a guard. She wasn't part of the prison staff. She was brought in when things didn't make sense. Reyes met her outside the control room. You're late, he said. Carter adjusted her glasses, unfazed. I came as soon as they used the word pattern. Reyes frowned. Pattern? She nodded. This isn't the first time. That stopped him. What are you talking about? Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled a thin file from her bag and handed it to him. Reyes flipped it open. Inside were reports, photos, names, all from the show, all marked with the same phrase. Subject exhibits external focus behavior. Reyes looked up. These are inmates, former inmates, Carter corrected. Reyes's jaw tightened. What happened to them? Carter met his gaze. They stopped responding. A chill ran through him. Like Pike? She nodded. At first, Reyes closed the file slowly. You're telling me this has happened before, and nobody said anything? Carter's voice was calm. Because it always ended the same way. Reyes leaned in. How? Carter hesitated, just for a second. Then said, they were removed from the unit. Transferred? Reyes asked. Carter didn't answer, and that was answer enough. They watched Pike through the monitor. Hours passed. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. Except every few minutes his eyes would shift, tracking something, following it across the empty cell. Reyes leaned closer to the screen. You see that? Carter nodded. He's engaging. With what? Reyes asked. Carter didn't respond. Because at that exact moment Pike leaned forward slightly and spoke. Not loudly, urgently, just clearly. Yes, he said. A pause. Then I understand. Reyes felt his chest tighten. Who is he talking to? Carter whispered. That's the question. The camera feed flickered for a split second. A brief distortion. Reyes blinked. Did you see that? Carter stepped closer. Rewind it. He did. Frame by frame. And then they saw it. For less than a second, a shape. Standing in the corner of the cell. Of reflection. Something else? Reyes's voice dropped. That's not supposed to be there. Carter didn't speak. Because she was already looking at something worse. Pike's reflection. In the steel surface behind him. It didn't match his movement. It moved. A fraction of a second later, like it was learning, like it was catching up. Reyes stepped back from the screen, heart pounding. What the hell is happening in that cell? Carter finally answered, quietly, carefully, as far as I can tell. She paused, eyes fixed on the frozen frame. He's not alone anymore. And just as the screen flickered again, the shape in the corner moved closer, right behind Pike, close enough to touch him. But what they noticed next changed everything. Pike wasn't reacting in fear. He was smiling. The pattern no one reported be noon. Cell 14 was no longer just a problem. It was a secret. The show continued operating like nothing had changed. Doors opened and closed on schedule. Meals were delivered. Lights cycled on and off. But beneath that rigid routine, something had shifted. Officer Daniel Reyes felt it in the silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. Dr. Evelyn Carter stood in the observation room, replaying the footage over and over again. The image froze on that same frame, the shape behind Aaron Pike, barely visible, distorted by static. Reyes leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Tell me what I'm looking at. Carter didn't turn. A behavioral anomaly. That's what the report says, Reyes snapped. I want the truth. Carter finally looked at him. The truth is, this isn't new. Reyes felt his jaw tighten. You said that already. What you didn't say is why nobody stopped it. Carter hesitated, then walked over to the console. She pulled up another file, older, grainier, different cell. 3 years ago, she said. Inmate Lucas Grady. Same unit. Same symptoms. Reyes watched the footage. Grady sat in his cell, just like Pike. Still. Silent. Then his eyes shifted. Tracking something unseen, Reyes muttered. No way. Carter clicked forward. Grady leaned forward, spoke, paused. Listen. Exactly like Pike. Reyes shook his head. What happened to him? Carter's expression didn't change. He was removed. Removed where? No answer. Reyes exhaled sharply. That's not a transfer, is it? Carter turned away. It wasn't supposed to escalate. Escalate into what? Reyes demanded. Carter didn't respond. Instead, she pulled up a third file, then a fourth, then a fifth. Each one the same. Different inmates. Different times. Same behavior. Same paying. Reyes stared at the screen. How many? Carter's voice dropped. 7 confirmed. 7? Reyes repeated. And nobody shut the unit down? They tried to contain it, Carter said. Reyes let out a bitter laugh. Contain what? Before Carter could answer, the monitor beeped. Both of them turned. Live feed. Cell 14. Pike had moved. For the first time in hours. He was standing now, facing the wall. Close enough that his forehead almost touched the concrete. Reyes leaned forward. What is he doing? Carter whispered. Watching. Watching what? Reyes asked. Carter didn't answer, because Pike raised his hand, and slowly pressed it against the wall, flat, like he was touching something on the other side. Reyes frowned. There's nothing there. Carter shook her head slightly. Not for us. Pike's lips moved. An O sound came through the feed, but it was clear he was speaking. Then he stopped, tilted his head, listening again. Reyes felt a chill creep up his spine. He's having a conversation. Yes, Carter said. Reyes turned to her. With what? Carter's voice was barely audible. That's what we never figured out. They moved down to the unit. This time, it wasn't routine. 2 additional guards followed behind them, tense, hands resting near their belts. No one spoke as they approached cell 14. Reyes stopped at the door. Looked through the slot. Pike was still there. Hand pressed to the wall. Frozen in place. Pike. Reyes called. No response. Step away from the wall. Nothing. Reyes signaled the others. Open it. The lock disengaged. The door creaked open. Reyes stepped inside carefully. Pike. No. Movement. He took another step closer, and then Pike spoke. He says you shouldn't be here. Reyes stopped cold. Who says? Pike didn't turn. Listen, he whispered. Reyes frowned. I don't hear anything. Pike smiled faintly. You will. Reyes exchanged a glance with the guards. All right. That's enough. We're moving you to medical. Pike finally moved, slowly lowering his hand from the wall. But instead of turning toward them, he took a step forward. Into the Reyes's heart skipped. Stop. But Pike didn't stop. He leaned in further, forehead touching concrete. Then he pushed. Hard. The sound was sickening, not loud, just a dull, repeated thud. Reyes rushed forward, grabbing him. What are you doing? Pike resisted. Not violently, but with unnatural strength. He's close, Pike murmured. I can feel him. Feel who? Reyes shouted. Pike's eyes snapped toward him, and for a split second Reyes saw something he couldn't explain. Not madness. Not confusion. Recognition. He knows you. Pike said. Reyes froze. What? Pike's smile widened slightly. He's been watching you too. The room felt smaller, tightened. Reyes shook his head. That's enough. He motioned to the guards. Restrain him. They moved in, but as they grabbed Pike, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the entire unit went dark. Total blackout. The silence hit instantly. No hum. No ventilation. Nothing. Control? Reyes called into his radio. Static. Control, respond. Nothing. In the darkness, a sound emerged. Soft, close, not mechanical, not human voices, either. Something else. Like whispering, layered. Overlay. Reyes turned sharply. You hear that? One of the guards whispered. Yeah. Carter's voice cut through the darkness. Stay still. The whispering grew loud. Not louder in volume, close, like it was moving through the room. Reyes felt it brush past him. Not physically, but something shifted in the air, right beside his ear. He clenched his jaw. This isn't real. Pike laughed. Soft, calm. Is now. The emergency lights flickered back on. Dim, blue. The room came back into view. Reyes looked around quickly. The guards were still there. Carter was near the door. Pike was no longer being held. He was standing in the center of the cell, unrestrained, perfectly still. Reyes blinked. How did he then? He stopped. Because Pike wasn't looking at them. He was looking behind Reyes. Slowly, very slowly, Reyes turned. There was nothing there, just the empty cell, but Pike's eyes tracked something. Move it. Reyes swallowed. What do you see? Pike didn't answer immediately. Then he said, he's closer now. Reyes's pulse pounded. Who is? Pike tilted his head, smiled, and whispered, the one who doesn't need a cell. The lights flickered again, and for a fraction of a second Reyes saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. A shape. Standing just behind him, close enough to touch. When the lights stabilized, it was gone. Reyes spun around. Nothing. Empty. But the feeling didn't leave. Carter stepped forward slowly. We need to shut this unit down. Reyes shook his head. That won't stop it. Carter's eyes met his. Then what will? Reyes didn't answer, because he didn't have one. Behind them, Pike sat back down on the bunk. Calm again. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. But just before Reyes turned away, Pike spoke one last time. Quietly. Almost gently. He says it's too late. Reyes stopped, didn't turn. Too late for what? Pike's voice barely carried across the room. For it to stay inside. And in that moment, Reyes realized something that made his blood run cold. This wasn't just happening in cell 14 anymore. Whatever Pike was talking to was no longer contained, and somewhere in the unit another cell door slowly clicked open. The thing that walked out click echoed louder than it should have. In a place built to swallow sound. That single mechanical snap cut through the unit like a gunshot. Reyes turned instantly. Who opened that? He barked. No one answered. The guards looked at each other, confusion spreading across their faces. Carter stepped toward the control panel mounted outside the cell, her fingers flying across the interface. I didn't trigger anything, she said, her voice tight. Control hasn't re-established connection. Another sound followed. Metal sliding. Slow, deliberate. Reyes stepped into the corridor, his boots echoing against the concrete. The dim blue emergency light stretched shadows into long, unnatural shapes. Halfway down the tier a door stood open. Cell 11. Reyes felt something sink in his chest. That's not possible. Every door in the show was designed to fail closed, not open. A power outage should have sealed them tighter, not released them. But there it was, unlocked. Waiting. Stay behind me, Reyes ordered. The guards hesitated, then followed. Each step toward the open cell felt heavier than the last. The air itself seemed thicker, harder to breathe. As they got closer, Reyes noticed something else. The silence. No movement inside. No voice. No reaction. He stopped just outside the threshold and looked. In empty, the bunk was untouched. The stainless steel sink dry. No inmate. Reyes's voice dropped. Where is he? Carter stepped up beside him, scanning the room. There's nowhere to go. The corridors are sealed. Reyes turned slowly, sweeping the tier, except something wasn't right. Another door. Farther down, slightly open. Then another. A third. One by one, like dominoes, the cells had begun to unlock, quietly, without command. without reason. Back up, Reyes said under his breath, but it was too late. A figure moved at the end of the corridor, not fast, not aggressive, just stepping forward. Reyes raised his hand instinctively. Stop right there. The figure didn't respond. As it moved closer, the details sharpened. An inmate, barefoot, dressed in standard issue, but his posture wrong, too stiff, too controlled. Identify yourself, Reyes shouted. The inmate stopped, head tilted slightly. Then, in a calm, even voice, he said, "You'd come." Reyes felt his stomach drop. Who? The inmate smiled faintly. The one in the wall, behind Reyes. Carter whispered. It's spreading. The inmate took another step forward. Then, another movement appeared behind him. Cells, other inmates, stepping out, silent, watching, not chaotic, not violent, organized. Reyes turned to the guards. We need containment now. There is no containment, Carter said quietly. Reyes snapped at her. There has to be. Carter shook her head. You saw the footage. It doesn't stay in one place. Reyes looked back at the approaching inmates. Then something hit him, hard. A realization that twisted everything. This isn't a riot, he said slowly. Oh, Carter replied. Reyes's voice dropped. It's a release. The lead inmate stopped just a few feet away, close enough for Reyes to see his eyes clearly, and what he saw there wasn't rage, wasn't fear. It was emptiness, like something had been removed or replaced. He's not in there anymore, is he? Reyes asked quietly. The inmate's smile widened just slightly. He doesn't need to be. Reyes's pulse hammered in his ears. Where is he? The inmate's gaze shifted past Reyes, toward the hallway behind him. Reyes turned and saw Pike, standing outside cell 14, free, unrestrained, perfectly still. How did you get out? Reyes demanded. Pike didn't answer immediately. Then he said, he opened it. Reyes took a step toward him. Who opened it? Pike's eyes met his, and for the first time there was no confusion in them. No instability, just clarity. The same one who opened everything else. Reyes felt the weight of the realization press down on him. This isn't in your heads, he said. Pike nodded. Slowly. No, he replied. It's in yours now too. The whispering returned. Not distant anymore, not faint, clear, close. Reyes turned sharply. The guards heard it too. Carter pressed her hands against her temples. It's overlapping, she said. Her voice strained. Sensory bleed. It's crossing perception. Reyes didn't fully understand, but he didn't need to, because he heard it right beside him. Voice. Not loud, not commanding, just present. You see me now. Reyes spun around. Nothing there, but the voice remained. You opened the door. I didn't open anything. Reyes muttered. You did. The voice replied. Reyes shook his head. This isn't real. The voice almost smiled. You've been watching me for years. Reyes froze. Images flashed in his mind. Surveillance feeds, endless hours, watching inmates in isolation, watching them break, watching them talk to nothing, listening, boarding, studying. And now something had been watching back. Carter stepped closer to him. Daniel, don't engage it. But it was too late. Reyes whispered. What are you? The answer came immediately. I am what's left. When everything else is taken away, the lights flickered violently. The entire unit seemed to vibrate. The inmates stood still, perfectly still. They were waiting. Reyes felt his breathing slow, his fear dulling, something else taking its place. Curiosity, understanding. The voice softened. You built this place to break them. Reyes didn't respond. You gave them silence, a pause, and something answered. Reyes closed his eyes. For a moment he understood. Not fully, but enough. When he opened them again, the corridor looked different. Not physically, but deeper, like there was another layer beneath it. Something just out of reach. Carter grabbed his arm. Stay with me. Daniel, he looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, he saw the fear in her eyes, not professional concern, not scientific curiosity. Fear. He's choosing, she whispered. Reyes frowned. Choosing what? Carter's grip tightened. Whether to stay, or go with it. Reyes looked back at Pike. The other inmates. The open cells. The silent, waiting corridor. Then he spoke. Not to Carter, not to the guards, but to the voice. What happens if I don't stop you? The answer came without hesitation. You won't. Reyes exhaled slowly. And if I try? A pause. Then, you already did. The meaning hit him like a shockwave. All the years, all the observation, all the silence enforced. They hadn't contained anything. They had created it, fed it, given it space to grow. Carter shook her head, almost pleading. Daniel, listen to me. This is still containment failure. We can fix this. Reyes looked at her one last time, then back at the corridor. The inmates. Pike. They're not breaking, he said quietly. Carter's voice trembled. What? Reyes swallowed. They're connecting? The whispering filled the space. Layered. Endless. Not chaotic. Not random. Structured. Like a system, a network. Reyes took a step forward. Carter grabbed him again. Don't. He gently pulled free. Do you think this story is disturbing? He said quietly, almost to himself. You're not ready for what comes next. Then he walked, not away, but deeper into the unit, toward the open doors, toward the waiting silence. The lights flickered one final time, and then everything went still. 3 months later, the official report was released. Electrical failure leading to temporary containment breach. No lasting security threat identified. The show reopened within weeks. New inmates transferred in. New staff assigned. Everything normal again, except for one thing. In the archived surveillance logs there was a clip. Just one marked as corrupted. But if you slowed it down frame by frame you could see it. Not clearly, fully, but enough. A figure standing behind the camera, watching, and just before the footage cuts it moves closer, like it's trying to step through, waiting for someone else to open the door.